are you guys using out there at the moment, right? What's your favorite drawing app or utility? So we've heard Krita. Anybody out there using Procreate? Oh yeah, okay, okay. Yep. Right, 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 right. Right, right, right. Wow, right, right, right. Well, actually, your journey started off perfect, right? I mean, if you're using sort of simpler tools, it's a good way to kind of get started. Because you want to kind of layer your experience with a drawing tool as much as possible. I'm super rusty, guys. Holy cow! Uh, you'll hear me mention this over and over again, but as with everything, um, you need to warm up, right? So with drawing, you need to warm up. With everything in life, really, you need to go through a period of kind of getting comfortable. And so the start of my day inside of a studio would generally be this, right? So I'd come in and I've got no rhyme or reason, no brief in my head. I'm just doing some drawing, right? And then just trying to figure out, well, just getting warmed up. Okay, so that's as much time as I'll give myself today. I'm going to go back to what we talked about earlier in here. And let's take a look at this Rembrandt guy again. Let's see if we can drag this guy over. Okay. Let's change our hand size. Go 49.6 by 49.6. Don't worry about if you're not familiar with Photoshop. I'll go through all of this stuff in due course. So let's come in here and we'll clear that. Here. 50%. Okay, so let's walk through the life of a production artist. So we'll take a look at this. And you guys are my production artists. I'm the producer. Okay? So I've brought this to the meeting and said, in our particular game scenario, this guy, let's be a little bit more creative. Let's say this guy is a renegade cardinal, and he's responsible for creating a situation that puts our heroes in dire need. I don't know what that is at the moment, right? So I present this to you, and the feedback is it's boring. Okay? So let's fix it. How do we make it less boring? Come on, I'm paying you guys. This is your job. Add a situation to it? All right, let's go. Let's do that. So, what kind of a situation would make this less boring? Fantasy? Now remember, this guy's a cardinal, right? So let's give it a time period, right? Oh, that's not my brush size. So let's define a time period now, right? What would be a good time period for us? But let's just say Assassin's Creed, right? You're working on the next Assassin's Creed, right? I'm going to throw the gauntlet down in a second here with you guys by saying, notice how easy it is to critique something. It's infinitely harder to suggest improvement. Your job as a concept artist, and I learned this the hard way, is not to tell me when something sucks, it's to tell me how to make it cool. How do I make this cool? Yeah, okay, right. So, let's hop in. Where's my my color picker? Let's grab my color picker back over here. Alright. So, let's say, oh, look at that. Let's say he's, I don't know, wandering out the courtyard of a cathedral of some kind. I need reference material for this. Let's say there are trees maybe growing along this pathway, something like that. And there are stairs that lead up to sort of this structure over here. And then we've got bodies. What have you. Or just, yeah, we'll make a pile. Make a pile of bodies, right? So is it getting more interesting? Yeah. Okay, why? Yeah. Yep, there's a story behind it. It's a little bit more emotional. Right? Maybe a pile of skulls collecting around here. Right? Now, take a look at that, right? In terms of using your imagination. Something like that, right? And we can come in here super quick. A darker color, right? And I got different hotkeys set up on my Cintiq downstairs, so it's kind of difficult. Oops. Oh, that's laggy. I'll leave that just as a rough sketch. Okay, so notice how the interpretation changes now. Let's make this a downtown of some kind. Right? Notice the interpretation of his facial expression changes because of the background I put in. Okay? So now, what else can we do to make it more interesting? Okay, add colors. Before we do that, I recommend we look at light. What time of day is it? Why? Make it overcast. Why? Moody. What kind of mood? Okay, so I've got my producer hat on now, right? So I'm like, oh man, what kind of mood are we trying to create here, guys? Right? So we want to. The producer starts to tease out a bit more information and says, we want to get the feeling that after this cutscene, your next mission is to assassinate this guy. So, what kind of mood do we want to create? Somber? Like a library? You want to go and relax with this guy and read a couple of books? Sorry, I'm being facetious on purpose. No, that's okay. That's okay.
It isn't sort of like an oppressive, like, kind of weather would be oppressive.
Ah,
Or,
now we're talking. Oppressive weather. That's cool. That's just triggered
mean,
excitement.
yours, meaning like, life is in, withheld.
Okay, cool. All right. So,
Yours, no hope, no life of hope.
yes, sweet. Okay, so let's say I come in here, and I don't have time to slap in a massive amount of color, right? But let's try and do it with tone, right? So we've got this guy kind of in flames right here. No, that doesn't work. So let's just go right. Yes, okay, so we got that. I'm going to sketch in this idea of, because I really like this idea of turbulent weather. So what that's triggering for me is dark, roiling storm clouds, right? Now, I'm using it to obscure the church, to give the idea. Yes. Oh, yeah, I respond to that. Yeah. Okay, so we've got this here, but would the smoke be better or would the clouds, the oppressive clouds, be better on the other side? Would the clouds be better on the other side? This side here or the other side? Come on, you guys are my concept artists, man. You guys are supposed to be designing cool. No. You're right. You're right. No. You are on the right track. So this points to an important question you need to ask your producer. Because it can work either way. Oh, yes, it does. It does. I know I'm putting you guys on the spot. I apologize for that. Here is what. That's cool. I'm a bit foggy myself. Don't worry about it. So here's my question to the producer, right? Is this shot about the evil emanating from the cathedral? And then the producer would say, no. It's about the cardinal character crossing over to the dark side. Yeah.
I think maybe things should be slightly non-right in, like maybe the smoke behind me is not around.
No, you're on the right track. I get your meaning. Yeah.
Smoke kind of emphasizing him. Yeah.
Okay, emphasizing him. So here is what I would do as a concept artist. Right? I'd come in here and say, let's see what we can do to emphasize the cardinal. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get rid of the smoke tendrils from the bonfire, right? Because I am going to send those wisps this way. And I might come in there with, I don't know, a different color. Let's go a little bit lighter so we can separate out the smoke from the fire kind of thing, right? And the smoke will be wisping this way, right, going through here. Right. So what I've done is that I've actually sent the smoke going through his eye line. So what ends up happening is that the viewer is subconsciously drawn to looking at his expression. Right? So now let's talk about his expression. Right? He's sort of in conflict. He's going from the good side to the dark side. Right? Rembrandt has done the work for us by shading half his face, showing a man divided. Right? Now, have you guys ever heard the metaphor, that guy was clouded with dark thoughts? You hear that before?
Yeah, I've heard it from people.
Yeah, we can use that. Let's do it. Like, we can, seriously, during the first stages of concept art, we can be as literal as we need to be. Right? So then it's like the producer says, yeah, it's about him. It's about him coming to some sort of conclusion. Now, check this out. So if I were to, let's undo that for a quick sec. Now, if I were to do sort of the dark clouds coming through this way, right? And then maybe it sort of blends in with the smoke in the background, right? And then I would shade it so that we have the lighting conditions that sort of support what we're trying to do here, right? Man, super laggy. I finished my brush stroke a second ago. You guys get the idea anyway. So I'd shade this in to kind of give that sort of a dark area. Let's go back down here. I'm going to throw another layer underneath here, actually. Man, this must be like a huge file. I didn't check the canvas size. I thought it was like 1920 by 1080, which should be reasonable. Okay. So let's pop you above that cloud, right? So we got the dark cloud thing going on, right? And we got the flames going on here. And then if we come down to, let's pop this up underneath the clouds. So now our design choices have a little bit more meaning, right? Because we're reflecting the thought of the cardinal, which is what the producer confirmed for us. He said that the shot needs to be about him turning to the dark side. And then as an artist, I'll go, you know what would be kind of cool? Is if we went in here and just lit up the church. Because he's leaving God behind. Right? What do you guys think of that? I'm sort of making this up on the fly. I just wanted, this is real time. I haven't pre-planned this. I wanted to show you guys what my thought processes were like every single day for 2 years of my life working in concept art. Right? And it's more interesting now. Right? This is your job. Now, there's a few things that I want you to understand about this process. Now, obviously, this isn't, this is still a fairly cheesy concept. So I'd end up doing like a dozen of these with different variations, right? So what you said before about the clouds working on either side, I would actually draw that up, visualize it, and say, hey, let's try it this way, because the producer might go, hey, you know what, I thought that shot was about the cardinal, but really, no, it's about walking away from the evil, taking over the cathedral. You never know. Your visuals, your job as a concept art is to inspire the producer, not the other way around, right? So your job is to go, hey, look at this. This is how this is working, right? We've got the flaming pile of bodies. We've got the godlight over the cathedral. The cardinal has turned his back on the church, and then the producer goes, cool, love it, right? So this is what I mean about taking a step back and understanding the emotional intent of the original painting and then interpreting it as an artist, right? And it also harkens back to, again, what I was saying earlier, it is really easy to critique a piece of art. It is incredibly hard to make it better. But that is the job, right? That is what you're supposed to be doing, right? So any questions about that? Any comments? I actually want to do a good version of this. This is actually looking pretty cool. Just for me, just being a finicky, artist, I probably want to jam him over just a little bit, right? You know why I jammed him over to the right a little bit?
Has it got anything to do with the movement?
Yes, partially. Yep. Is there a significance to the fact that he's facing left?
With his facing towards the body and away from his head?
Yes. Yep. Most definitely. Also, something that you'll learn in composition class, he's facing right to left. And in a Western context, because everything I talk about with compositional rules is in a Western context, things that travel from screen left to right are comfortable, because that's the way we read. Things that face right to left are uncomfortable and are designed to make us feel uncomfortable. Right? These are the tools.
Looking at it now and it kind of hurts a little.
This is what I was telling you about giving you the tools to design cool. Right? So let's define what cool is. Cool is creating an emotional response to the art and an understanding of the narrative going on in that piece of art. It's why all of us, I think all of us unanimously agreed, that this one was better, right? This particular, whoops, I forgot I'm using a Cintiq monitor. I think that's why we universally like this one better than this one. You don't have to say yes, There's something I like about this better. Oh, you can't see? Yeah. Now I'm just showing up the ArtStation shot of the knights surrounding a slayed dragon or slayed creature of some sort, because there's that story going on. Okay, so let me show you how this works. I think this is full screen. There we go, full screen. Okay. So notice that everything that I talked about is working in here. We have a light coming from left to right. That light is coming from left to right because it is the most comfortable light, right? We have an area of high contrast, which I didn't talk about, which draws the eye. And we have our highest degree of lighting around our central character. These guys are in shadow in the background, right? And there is a little bit of a split where this creature splits the light and the dark, right? And we've got rule of thirds working and all that other kind of stuff, right? So those are some of those compositional rules that are working there. But what makes this one here appealing? Because it's got compositional rules working as well, right? Well, it's got what we call the Rembrandt shadow, right? Where, actually not this one per se. But all character artists, character designers are familiar with the Rembrandt shadow. I'll talk about that in a little bit, right? I called it the Rembrandt shadow because I was looking at this, but when you look at the face, it's not there. But we've got shadowing in the face, right? And we've got nice highlight around the one side contrasting with shadow on the other side. It's a nice S-curve pose, so that's a very comfortable pose. You'll learn more about that when I talk to you about principles of animation, right? So there's a lot going on here, foreground and background, creating a sense of depth, and so on and so forth. But this one's definitely got the story, right? And this is one where we try to build a story in, right? So you guys get that? This is what you will be tasked to do. So I'm going to just briefly, just because I mentioned it, I'm just going to briefly touch on it. So let's head on over to Rembrandt. All concept artists use the Rembrandt triangle. The Rembrandt triangle is sort of the best lighting conditions for portraiture. Right? There's something about psychological about a 45-degree golden hour angle of light that's quite appealing to all of us, right? And so the Rembrandt triangle is, oh, oops, 1 second. I'm grabbing the wrong scroll window. Is the triangle formed by the shadow cast by the nose, right? So when you get that Rembrandt triangle, you know that you've got that perfect portraiture angle of light. Right? So this is, again, I'm really trying to kind of show you, really quickly, in bits and pieces, how classical fine art study and art history study translates into how you problem solve a concept art for an Assassin's Creed game. Right? This is what I'm trying to accomplish. So when we are studying various different artists, I want you to look at it with different eyes than you have in the past. I want you to start to study and appreciate their mastery of light and shadow and texture and color in terms of trying to tell a story inside of a portrait, because we'll be doing that a lot with our own concept art pieces. Right? Okay, any questions about that? Cool, okay. All right, let's go back to this idea of concept. So let me just gonna open up a new canvas here. It's a 2K image, that's what it's doing. Pop over, let's grab a 1920 by 1080. Shade this with a little bit of gray. This is an old kind of painter's trick. The one thing that you do straight away when you have a piece of canvas is you kill the white. The white is really intense, and it's like a creativity destroyer. Right? So that very first thing I tend to do is to just shade that canvas. Now I choose 50% gray for a reason. It gives me a nice read on my lights and my darks. Right? Photographers use an 18% gray, right? And that has to do with exposing the light and the dark. Right? So when it comes to actually getting in there and creating your own pieces, right? One of the things that I kind of want to impart upon you in terms of the way to approach design is to get away from the classic methods of drawing that you are used to in the past. Right? One of my jobs will be to try and break down some very, very bad habits that you might have accumulated over time through no fault of your own. It has to do with the psychology of how we visualize things. So, the first order of business is to attack this idea of silhouette drawing, right? Versus what Scott Robertson calls draw through, right? Drawing through an object. So, let's just say, as an exercise, I'm going to draw a human head or a character's head the way I used to do it as a kid. Right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to draw a female character. Right? The line has to be perfect. Right? And that's the silhouette of the head. There's the cheek. And then down. And there's the, I think the chin is about there. I'm honestly not trying to do a bad drawing. I'm trying very, very hard to make a good character drawing. I think the nose is about there. You ever get that situation where, you space out the eyebrows and then you draw that one kind of perfect eye, and you're taught how to do that diamond or that almond shape and things like that. Then you're like, oh my god, where do I put the other eye? Corner to corner, I think it's there. Oof. And I'm trying to draw the hair, right? How many of you guys draw like this? That perfect. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like with
Yeah, yeah, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going with this, obviously, right? So why do we draw like this? Well, this is called silhouette drawing, and we draw like this because of a primitive response that we have in terms of identifying shape and shadow, right? Our eyes are designed to respond to light and dark before color. We interpret like a nanosecond quicker light and dark or shadow before we interpret color. So this is built into our survival mechanism, and we're based on that. We are wired to identify a silhouette quickly, right? So we could see a lumbering beast coming out of the bushes, and we'll know it's a threat before we even realize what the heck it is, right? That's hardwired into our biology. And that's why when we're trying to capture an image, a lot of us start off silhouette drawing straight off the bat, right? Whereas I've seen a couple of examples already where, especially on Discord, where you're creating construction lines, right? And the construction lines give you a handy guide in terms of where to place things, right? And how to identify sort of the curvature of the head and where to put certain details, right? And then staying loose and staying rough allows you to kind of sketch out a character, right? But this idea of using construction lines and guidelines is very useful. Now, I'm not using all the construction lines that I learned as a kid, obviously because I've practiced them quite a bit over the years, but I'm still using the primary construction lines, front of the body, etc., etc. Right? So you get the idea. Just in a few seconds, I've actually created a better sort of female character than that one because of my use of construction lines. Now, I wanted to show you this example, not to show you how construction lines work, but to show you that creating art is an experimental process, riddled with mistakes, right? That's your journey to doing fine art, fine-looking concept art pieces is what I mean. And one of the things that a lot of people don't understand when they're taking visual studies or they're taking concept art is the fact that you can do hundreds of these roughs. You can put layer over layer over layer and change your mind again and again and again while you're coming up with various different pieces. And then when you're satisfied, you can add a new layer over top. You can bring the opacity of this guy down. Sort of zoom in there. And then go in and then do your final line work. Right? Whatever, however you want to do the character, whatever it is. Right? Et cetera, et cetera. Now, and this is the piece that you end up showing to your mates. And then you do the artist lie. We all lie like this. We say, yeah, check out what I drew last night. Yeah, I drew this first go. Right? But the truth of the matter is that there's hundreds of, or no, not hundreds, but dozens of roughs before you get to that final stage drawing, right? Even I'm doing my tight line, I'm going through and I'm making adjustments as well, right? That kind of thing. Anyway, on and on, right? So, the one thing that, I lost my train of thought here. So, the one thing I've mentioned in the past as well is that those art of books that you guys might have seen, or maybe some of you guys collect, or some of you guys have volumes of, they're usually our first step in learning how to draw. And we think, oh, I want to draw like that. So we sit there and we copy what we see, which is fine, right? But what we don't realize is that we think those artists crank those out first go. Right? I definitely thought that when I was copying the artwork of Art of Empire Strikes Back, Art of Star Wars. I thought Nilo Rodis and the other guy's name. I thought the chief concept artists were just drawing that straight off the top of their head, right? But there's a development process with roughs and thumbnails and mistakes over and over and over again before that final piece is done, right? So don't ever trust those art of books. They're no indication of whether or not you can draw if you can't kind of draw that way immediately, right? There's a lot of work that goes behind those pieces of artwork, and that's what we're going to be learning in this particular module, right? What else? There was something I was going to mention in terms of that as well. Oh, it escapes me. So I'll just leave it for the time being. And so what we're going to start off with next week is to attack character design first. And generally, most art courses start with perspective and get you guys doing environment drawings and learning the perspective fundamentals to start off with. But at the heart of most concept artists, you want to start creating characters straight away. So we'll take a shot at that, and I will be walking you through life drawing sessions as well. So we'll take a look at studying models from life and seeing what we can learn from that as well, as we bring it into our own kind of concept art pieces. Okay, any questions, thoughts, or comments?
So, will we be tackling environments at this point?
Yes, we will. Yep. As you can see in my sort of demonstration, actually, the process of doing environments for me is identical to the process that I use for characters. A lot of scribbling, a lot of sort of sculpting with lines to try and figure out shape. But I'll couple that with perspective. I generally try to spend a fair amount of time with 1-point and 2-point perspectives. But because there's a lot to cover, we'll just have to sort of figure out how far we want to take the environment stuff. Right? If you guys are predominantly interested in environment art, more than definitely, I'll shift the emphasis of the course towards that. It's really up to you guys. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to touch on. Oh yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about happy accidents, but maybe I'll leave that for another time. Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll touch on is this idea of rapid iteration for thumbnails. Right? Now, this is sort of an important concept for you guys, and it's going to be difficult at first for you guys to change the way you approach your artwork and adopt this methodology. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about this idea of rapid iteration, right? So the first thing that I do when I get in a brief, let's say I've got to do a combat marine or something like that, right? The very first thing that I do is I give myself a relatively sort of thick brush, a little bit smaller, and then I start playing with shapes and shadows a little bit, right? And my first drawing is generally straight up and down kind of interpretation. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to think about what I want to do, right? So there's probably going to be no kind of detailing on this guy just yet. I'm going to move on. That's turning out pretty horrible. So, you know, I might just do kind of a standing pose to begin with. Maybe. I don't know. This guy's leaning awkwardly, sort of a weird angle. Well, and I might do something like that. Now, I will do maybe a dozen of these across, a dozen tiny silhouette drawings like this across to try and kind of get warmed into this idea of doing a soldier, right? Now, this is where innovation lies. And I'll tell you why, right? Because the first thoughts that come to your head from a creative standpoint are invariably going to be cliche. I don't care how creative you think you are. It's just a rule of nature. And I'll tell you why, right? Because when we're faced with a creative problem, we have this sort of creative stress, right? And our body goes into survival mode to deal with stress. So what does the body consider when it's under stress? Fight or flight, right? So to make that decision in a hurry, the brain will formulate a plan grabbing the nearest neurons that are wired up to that particular situation. So in a creative problem, the first ideas that come to my head will be the last movie that I saw, the last comic book that I read, the last television show that I watched, Netflix thing that I saw, right? It's just human nature, right? When the brain has to retrieve information, it'll grab the closest neurons to be able to help you solve that problem, right? So you guys might have had the situation where you thought you had a cool idea and you do this beautiful drawing and you go, hey, check this out, and you show your mates and they're like, oh, cool, that's kind of like the Matrix meets Umbrella Academy. And you're like, no, it's not. And you take it out of their hands, you go back and you redraw it all grumbling and stuff. Because it's happening subconsciously, right? So one of the mentors that I worked with said, you have to do 20 iterations of an idea to get to the good stuff. And here's why, right? So let's say I'm drawing an elf character, right? So the first iterations of the elf character will be a ripoff of the Rivendell elves. I'm just getting those ideas out of my head. And then I'll have, maybe some Brian Froud elves or something like that. So I'm digging through all of the sort of recent memories that I have of elves. Then I run out of ideas. So I have to start digging deeper. I have to start thinking about other elf references that maybe I don't quite remember easily. I might look up reference and things like that. And then I run out of the sheer number of elves that I've iterated on. So then I start to have to bring in other sources. So I go, well, what about Aztec warriors? Or what if there's something over here with, some other type of warrior? And I start to blend them, and I start digging deeper and deeper. But that's still not enough, right? And I still run out of ideas, right? Then you start digging deeper into your childhood memories and your own personal past and things that you make an emotional connection for you that only you have, that only you've experienced. Nobody else has experienced it. And bam, originality, innovation. Because you were forced to dig really, really, really deep into your memories to come up with very, very unique ideas that are an amalgamation of stuff that has existed in the past and your own personal experiences from life that are unique to you. And that's why that iterative process is so important to get to the really, really good stuff. Never pass off your first drawing as your last drawing. And I can say that hand on heart, that's probably the best advice I could ever give you, right? You'll get to the good stuff the more you go mining inside your head and inside your heart for really, really good images, right? So, any thoughts on that? Okay, because I'm going to force you through it. So when you submit to me character designs, I'll be like, good, go and redraw it again 5 or 6 times, right? In the beginning. And then it'll start to grow to 10, 20 times, right? And you'll hate it, but you'll arrive at some really, truly, truly cool images. Okay? So, we've got 10 minutes left. Shall we pop over into the YouTube channel and take a look at some videos? Or not?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, okay, let's do it. All right. All right. Okay. So let's pop over to display 1. Oh, no. I want to go display 2. All right. So let's check out what you guys posted for video next. Ah, cool. All right. Sweet. So I think I'll just work my way down from the top. I'll skip the channel, and we'll take a look at this. How to Train the Dragon, of course.
Don't work.
Okay. Oh, sorry. All right, leave it at that. Okay, what works and what didn't work about that?
I realised in that clip,
Yeah.
I once met the author of books in a book fair when I was younger.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Saying about how she based Toothless on her cat in real life, and I noticed by watching that clip, and you can see it in his characteristics.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the animators went and studied cats for a number of days. We've done that in the past. I remember when we were working on this game idea that was incorporating attack dogs. We went and studied dogs at a kennel for a long, long, long time. We draw them from various different angles and just study their behavior. So why is that research important? Or actually, why is it important that Toothless act cat-like?
I think like also in terms of what this is about is how we like say my dog people or whatever exactly, but like I do know that like that when you like animate an animal or animal humans anybody who needs it research the behavior.
Yes.
Like it's believable.
So what makes the cat movement believable in a dragon? You probably won't answer this. I'm just going to go ahead and answer for you. When you are telling a lie and you want someone to believe that lie with all their heart, what do you do?
You straighten it out.
Yeah. I'll tell you one technique I use. You put a bit of truth in it. Right? You put a true fact, another true fact, a lie, and a true fact. Right? Because there's so much truth in there that right away the lie becomes easier to digest. Does that make sense? So when you're creating a fantasy creature, you are lying to the audience and convincing them that this creature can actually exist. So I've met a lot of creature designers, younger creature designers, who would say, well, I don't have to base this on anything on Earth. It's on Mars. I can draw horns growing out of the side of the creature's waist, or I can, do whatever. I can turn the head upside down and I can put the head on the foot. So why is that stupid? Because that younger artist was right. It's the planet Mars. We've never seen creatures before. You can actually have a creature with a head on the foot. Why is that stupid? Well, I'll tell you what. How do we make a creature design of something that lives on Mars believable to an audience? Well, we study something like a Komodo dragon or a dinosaur or a lizard or insects, and we put that little bit of truth into our design to sell the lie. So when we're designing creatures, the more we can put something relatable in our world into the creature, the more it'll make sense. There's also body mechanics and nature and how gravity and physics works and all that kind of stuff, evolution, but we'll get into that later. The big thing is, to sell that lie, we have to put in a grain of truth. And that's why the cat really works for Toothless, the cat-like movement. Because straight away, we make an emotional connection with it. Right? What didn't work for this sequence? Who here didn't like this clip? Okay, that's cool. Nothing wrong with this clip then, hey? All right. We've got a couple of minutes. Let's see if we can do one more. Cats don't dance. Nice. Okay. Let's take a look at this one. Is that Cats Don't Dance? Okay. Ooh. That's cool. Okay. So the one thing that was really cool about that one for me is the magical tree, right? Just because another thing that I'm working on at the moment is this idea of 4 trees growing into one kind of thing. So this is actually a good reference point for me. So who posted that clip? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So why this particular clip? Okay.
But like also like I do watch that particular hit really with the anime and the often story as well, obviously, but like I can almost something about the animation quite soon. I mean you can expect it because it's like music, but
Right.
you can expect it to see it anyways, but
Right. Right.
I can almost like it's still like I can't really think of why I chose it.
Okay.
It's something about it.
Okay, cool. So let's pinpoint it. So I can talk about a few things that really worked in that particular clip, right? So we have a sort of this introduction that's very, very sedate, right? Actually, let's go to the beginning, and I'll do a breakdown step by step, right? So we open the sequence with this note, right? Now, this note is the underlying emotional tension in the sequence, right? And it's resolved at the end when she throws that away, right? Notice we've got a bunch of eye-level shots going on here. So what the eye-level shots do is they get us familiar. Well, it makes us feel like we're part of the conversation, right? We have a camera traveling up with a mutation. That's a common kind of technique for an introduction of a monster. So why do that? Right, right. Yeah. So generally, when you're looking up at something, you're giving it loads of power over you, right? So the upshot is a very, very powerful device in terms of that. Now notice what they do with the lighting in the background, taking into consideration the exercise that we did with the cardinal and the cathedral and all that kind of stuff. Look at what's going on in the background, right? So we've got the darkness and the cloud, right? But what we also have is underlighting, right? Now, underlighting is creepy for a number of different reasons. The primary reason is that we very rarely ever see underlighting in real life. Very rare. So when we see it, it's odd. It's very, very strange, right? The second is the implication is that the light is coming from hell, right? Loosely. That's one of the psychological implications. So therefore, those choices for the lighting in the background is there to enhance this metamorphosis or this creature entering the shot. So the interesting thing for me, this is not necessarily an art choice, but it's a dialogue and scripting choice. So we've got 2 characters confronted with a monster and they decide to dance. So at this point I'm like, okay, what's going on here, right? So later on I figure it has something to do with their powers or their abilities, right? But it's also a playful nonchalance in sort of demonstration in front of grave danger. Right? So I got at that point that this was part of the spell casting. Now look how they're deliberately using compositional framing here, right? So we got the characters framed in the moon, right? Now we don't have the underlighting on the character. We do in the background, but not on the characters, right? The characters are lit by the moonlight coming down on them. So it's a downward cast of light, right? So it's good guy light, right? And then we've got this creature that comes forth, right? So these are more of those compositional techniques coming to bear to sort of make that clip interesting to you in terms of its emotional impact and all that kind of stuff. And we'll take a look at various different types of animation styles, right? The interesting thing is that I've worked on a variety of different properties, some involving extreme violence with gangs at war with each other with automatic weapons, all the way to like soft and fluffy kids cartoons. And the one thing that I can tell you guys is that the rules of composition and the rules of art that you learn in this module are applicable across the board for all of them, because the intent of the art is to elicit an emotional response, right? So any thoughts or comments or questions on that? Okay, I saw Hannah pop in and then leave, so I think they're up next. So I'm going to call it there. What I would like you guys to do, and this is just an exercise, for actually not necessarily, for the next visual studies session, not the one with Phil, but with me, is I want you to think about this scenario. A group of rogue thieves try to steal a treasure in a cavern and accidentally awaken a demon. Okay? That is the brief. Now, whether you sketch ideas out or you write them down, this is the brief I'm giving you as a producer. I want you to tell me how you're going to execute that. Right? Tell me what the story is. Because I'm not a writer, I'm not a concept artist, I'm a producer. All I want to see is like a roving band of thieves accidentally awakening a demon and then getting slaughtered. Now, it's your job to make that cool. Is that good? You guys get that?
Yeah, writing down that.
Perfect. Yeah.
So it's a group of thieves accidentally awaken the demon and it's
Yes, that's it.
right.
Yeah. Okay, we should have some very, very interesting ideas next session. Okay, if that's it, I'm going to call it there, guys, and we'll see you next class. Okay, I will see you guys later. Cheers.
Thank you.
No worries.
You did a great last one.
Cheers. And I'm going to end the stream there. So if there's anything that I might have missed or that you want to be caught up on, just let me know and I'll pop it in the Discord. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later.